So listen, you just have to bear with us for about the next hour and 15 minutes, guys. Especially you crowd from Milltown. Bear with us for the next hour and 15 minutes or so. And the idea of this is basically just a cookery demonstration. We're going to cook 4 dishes. The idea of this is to show you kind of what we're looking for the apprentice chef when you submit your dishes. What we don't want to see is carbon copies of these. If you go forward and do a project and get to the cook-off, you don't want to see carbon copies of these, okay? You know, you can use the methods that we're using, the cuts of meat, etc., the techniques, but not exactly the same. And very simple dishes, using local produce. We're going to do a fillet steak with pepper sauce, okay? Nice and simple. We're going to do a place dish with prawns, rouleau place with prawns. We're going to do a vegetarian salad, and we're going to do a duck dish. So really simple. Now, before we get started, the first thing I'd say to you is you can see the way we're all organised, okay? Everything's clean, tidy. This is how you should be working in your home ec rooms, firstly, okay? But like, the only way you can work like this is by cleaning as you go. So you do one job, you clean down a section, you do an extra, okay? And you have your time plan. And I'm sure you'll be doing that as you go on to study home ec. You know, when you have your classroom situation, you have an hour and 20 to cook your dish, you'll mostly be doing time plans. So that's 9 o'clock, you know, gather equipment. 9:05, peel potatoes, blah, blah, blah. And that's part of your project. But we'll help you with that. Okay, so when you submit your project, we'll look at your time plan to make sure you're doing everything correctly. We look at your presentation, we look at how you can improve your dish. So, as Chef was saying earlier, we've had dishes that have come to us as just a breast of chicken with 3 balls of mashed potato and a sauce. So your mentor chef is then going to help you develop that dish to the type of stuff that you've seen on the videos, okay? Nothing wrong with spuds, lads, but just put it into perspective, you know? You don't want 3 balls of spuds and a little bit of chicken. So it's all about, and that's why it's so important that you use your mentor chef throughout this whole program, okay? And you can email us 24/7. We're obviously busy doing our own things as well, but we'll always get back to you within 24 hours. We're usually back to you within 2 or 3 hours, to be honest. Stephanie Kearney from Butterman a few years ago was emailing me every 20 minutes, literally, okay? But the results were there. So we're going to get started, guys. The first dish we're going to do, like I say, ask any questions as we're going. First dish we're going to do is just a fancy steak, mushrooms and onions, okay? So we're going to do a fillet steak, we're going to do some roast shallots, mushrooms and bacon, and we're going to do a rusty potato, which Chef's going to make there. So you can get started with that.
Okay, so just before we start, okay, just like to welcome, we have a group of students here this morning from Hungary. They're here from Hungary, they're here for 3 weeks, and they're Erasmus students, so they get to come to Ireland to study. They're studying at the moment culinary and hospitality back home, their home country. Come from 3 weeks here to Ireland to see what way it is we operate here. And likewise for a lot of our students as well, for example, that are here can also become Erasmus students and work and go to, say, other colleges across Europe as well, or maybe go to Hungary even just to experience this. So up the back here, we've got students from Hungary, so let's give a round of applause just to welcome them here to Ireland. Okay, so what I'm going to get started with, okay, the first part of the dish is that, and again as Chef was saying, what's very important is that what we're giving you today are dishes, for example, that just kind of show you the simple techniques. And I spoke to a lot of you this morning in relation around inside, but what we're looking for is just the simple fundamentals to be done correctly. And it's like, for example, you see us with our knives, our chopping skills, and all these different things about plating, about how it is we actually compile and bring a dish together. So what you will see today, it'll inspire you, show you, for example, how it is to put dishes together. But what's important though at the same time is that look at how it has been done, but take your own dishes then, for example, and how it is you're going to develop those dishes, and using, as again as I said, local influences, local ingredients, local good mood foods, because everything local is pretty much good mood food. It's good quality, and try to stay away from the term convenience. So what I'm going to do now for you to get this started and stop talking, I'm going to produce a small little roasted potato. And all we've got here is we've got ourselves some potato, obviously peeled. And quite simply what we're going to do is just going to grate my potato, okay? Now, if you feel you're using a grater, for example, and you don't feel that comfortable with a grater, make sure you just cover your hands so that you don't get the chip and there's small bits of your fingers inside it, okay? So, run down to this. Now, the biggest issue in relation to the use of potatoes is that there's a high water content. Okay, so there's a very high water content in it. Okay, so if we were going to continue with our potatoes, for example, having, say, left the water in, and the problem is that the rosty's not going to stay together. Okay, so what we need to do once we have the potato grated is that we need to strain it off. Same way with, for example, if you're you wash parsley, you know, we should all wash our herbs, especially if you're chopping. So what you would do is you'd wash your parsley, you chop it, and then all you're going to do is, like what I'm going to show you, is you're going to put it into a cloth, and you're going to squeeze the moisture out of it. And that's how you end up with your parsley nice and soft, okay? So it's nice and soft, so it's there for your presentation. And again, this is incredibly simple. A rosti potato. Now, this, for example, there are, like, say, for example, inside Killarney, there's a restaurant called the Brickeen on High Street, and they're famous for boxty. Same, very similar to that of, say, it's pretty much an Ulster, say, up in the north of Ireland, where you have boxty pretty much. But in the boxty, they put salmon, they put prawns, they put beef, they put chicken. So, but they're actually known for doing that type of a dish. Again, a local dish, but it's a. What I'm trying to say is that you understand how to make a boxty, for example, to make a rosti, but you can vary it, put your own little different twist in it as you see fit. So what I'm going to do with this is, I'm going to put my potatoes into it. And quite simply, all I'm going to do is, because there's a lot of water, I'm just going to squeeze see the water coming out of it? Just squeeze the water out of it. Now, I'm going to get rid of the excess water here.
And just with your rosties, guys, we've had a lot of people do rosties, and they might have put black pudding into them and served them with pork. They might have put roast red peppers into them. They might have used a mixture of potato, parsnips, celeriac, carrot. So you can be nice and creative with these, and it's just adding that carbohydrate to your dish. You know, instead of a ball of mashed potato that doesn't go particularly well with steak, something like a rosti is nice, or potato wedges or something along those lines.
So what I have here is the potatoes obviously been squeezed dry. Yeah, obviously need a small bit of moisture, so it's going to hold its shape. What's very important, what you're going to see us with here this morning, is this whole thing of taste. You're going to see the whole thing of, say, seasoning. I mean, one thing you see with all our students inside in class here, each and every student when they come into class, mandatory part of their uniform, tasting spoon and a thermal probe. Because we want to see students continuously tasting. Because you're continuously tasting, what you're doing is you're actually educating your palate. Do you understand? So that's something that you as students get involved in the program. When you're producing your dish, to ensure that you're seasoning, and you're going to over season, you're going to under season. But it's horrible when you see somebody putting a beautiful plate together and it's completely lacking in flavor. Lacking in flavor, lacking in seasoning, and it takes from what is effectively a beautiful dish, and it's something as small as that can be detrimental to how your whole dish works. So all I'm going to do with this again is going to use a small bit of sea salt or rock salt. Now where you can possible, for example, use sea salt or use rock salt. Stay away from, say, that Saxa salt, for example. I wouldn't get any money from them for sales in Saxa salt, because Saxa salt is effectively like nitrates, and it's kind of the leftovers from the chemical industry, okay? And it's not really that natural a product. So use where you can get, say, rock salt or sea salt. It's a much more subtle flavor, doesn't overpower, and it's a lot easier to manage. So a wee bit of rock salt, small bit of cracked black pepper. And all I'm going to do is put a small bit of herb through this. Now you can, for example, put a wee bit of garlic, which I have here. Just mix these items together. As simple as that. So now, what I'm next going to do is I'm going to put my nice hot pan on here. And I have what we call like a TN ring. Or for all the world, a nice name for a scone cutter. Okay, TN ring. So your pan nice and hot. Very, very important. When you're working with your pans, the most important thing is when you hear the sound, you hear the sear. Okay, because with that, what it means, you're actually sealing it. If, for example, you put it onto a cold pan, it's like, for example, when we're at home and we're stir frying, and a lot of us at home, for example, would be, and even in your home economics classes, a lot of us you have, because of safety concerns, you have to use, say, electric. Now the problem with electric is that it brings up the temperature, but it goes cold incredibly fast. That's why you see a lot of chefs preferably would rather work with, say, gas, because gas is much more effective. So again, my pan is nice and hot. I'm going to a small bit of oil. and a small touch of butter. Now we'd always use, when you're using butter, we'd always use a small bit of oil, because again, what the actual oil does, it allows the butter to actually impart the flavour. But if you use just butter, because of the fat content in the butter or the sediment you get inside it, the butter's going to burn, and that's going to interrupt the caramelization of it. Okay, so pan nice and hot, and all I'm going to do is get a small bit of my Play-Doh that we've seasoned and mixed. You can use a spoon. Just press them nice and neatly into that, okay? And again, there's a nice searing sound from that. Now, what we find sometimes with, say, students here, for example, the first start is the sound of frying or sauteing. Straight away, they start to turn it up and turn it down, and they're afraid of their lives because they have a feeling that it's burning. Try to get used to the idea of something that's searing, okay? Something that's caramelizing, something that's browning. If, for example, if I put this on and straight away started to move it, it would start to cool down. So I'm not going to get it to caramelize. I suppose if you look at, say, one analogy, be very similar to it would be, we often look at, say, television channels there where you see a guy walking across a pit of coals. And you wonder how he can walk for 10 meters across a pit of coals. And the reason behind it is because he's moving so fast that there's not enough time for the skin to make contact with the coals. That's what I like to tell you, I still won't chance it. But the point being is that if you're cooking with food and if you start moving it from temperature, you're not going to get it to seal it the way you want it to. So again, my palette knife. And all I'm going to do is just turn these guys here. Nice and caramelised on both sides, and quite simply I'm just going to put a wee bit of butter on top of each one, and I'm going to pop these into the oven. Okay, chef?
Yeah, so that's the first part of the dish, guys, the rosti. Second part is your steak. So when you're grilling steaks, okay, you want prime beef. So fillet, sirloin, strip loin, ribeye. You're not using, the tougher pieces of meat. Who eats their steak medium or pink? Throw up your hands. That's pretty good, actually. Yeah, that's actually really good. If you're using red meat in your dish, steak or lamb or duck, you're going to be cooking it pink. Okay? So medium rare, medium. When you cook a piece of meat well done, you are losing all the flavour. It dries out the juice. Just try and cook your meats red when you're doing it for this project. So I have a fillet steak here. I have just wrapped up in cling film. So it's nice and tight. I'm just going to cut through here and it just gives a lovely shape of the fillet steak. Okay? Now when you buy a steak, go to your local butcher, try not to buy the pre-packed stuff, and it should be the colour of that chopping board. It should be that bright red. It should be kind of a dark red, almost brown. And the reason being is, that means the beef has been matured or hung. If it's the colour of that chopping board, it's too fresh. It's going to be tough, it's not going to be flavoursome, okay? So use your local butchers, use your local producers, and get the best quality that you can. Now we're going to put a hot pan on, and a little bit of sea salt and pepper on all sides of the steak. And again, a hot pan, and we're going to seal the beef off in a pan. Do you know why we seal beef off in a pan, guys? Anyone know why we seal it off? Okay? What it does, it seals in all the flavours and all the juices. If you don't do that, when you cook the steak, all the juice is going to come out, it's going to be tasteless, it's going to be stewed, it's not going to be very nice, okay? So really hot pan, again a little bit of oil. And like Chef was saying there, you have to be listening to the food when you're cooking it. So really hot, in the pan, and back onto the heat. We're going to sear all sides of that beef. What I mean by sear is get it caramelised on all sides, okay? The way you get a bit of flame going, no harm in that. Bit of flame going, remember. Okay, so you turn it over, and what you're looking for really is a nice caramelisation and a fire extinguisher. And, just kind of, sear it off nicely on all sides. And that's going to give you a beautiful tender steak. Now the other important thing when you're cooking meats is, when it's cooked you have to let it rest. Have you heard the term, letting meat rest when it comes out the oven? Okay, what you do is you just basically leave it 4 or 5 minutes to let all the juices go back through the meat and to let the beef relax. It's a bit like if I was to put you into a hot oven for 10 minutes, you're going to come out and you're going to be pretty angry, okay? If I threw you on the counter for 2 minutes, you start to relax a little bit. That's the way I try to explain it with meat. You know, you can't serve meat straight away. All we're going to do now is take a little bit of butter again. Now, we don't discourage the use of butter, because in moderation, like Susie was saying, it's a good fat. Okay, so a little bit of butter, and with a little bit of garlic now. I'm just going to crush it. My thumb, throw that in the pan. I'm going to put in a little bit of thyme. So think of flavours that work together, guys. Garlic and thyme and beef. Strawberries and cream. Tomatoes and basil. You're not going to put kiwi with chicken. You're not going to do a dish and look at it and say, oh, that's missing something. Let's stick half a kiwi on it. Because it's not going to work with it. So think of these classic, what we call classical marriages in foods. Fish and lemon, stuff like that, okay? Now let's start cooking this steak. It's back onto the heat. And we're going to do what's called baste it. And what basting is, every now and again we're going to take all the fat from the pan and we're going to just pour it over the meat. And this guy gives a lovely pink piece of meat. Now I'm going to cook this on the stove top for about 5 minutes. Keep basting it. If I was to do it well done, or if it was a bigger steak, I'd finish it in the oven. But we're just going to keep basting it and getting that lovely even pink colour throughout the whole meat, okay? So you're going to do the garnish for the beef next time. You okay with that? Shallots and bacon.
Okay, so the next thing what we're going to do is got ourselves a nice little hot pan on. Okay, so the shallots and the bacon, okay, so we're going to we're going to saute these guys off. Again, what we require is obviously the temperature to be nice and high with it. We're going to put the bacon on first because they take maybe that wee bit longer. So what's important obviously is the bacon is going to have a wee bit of a fat content. And as you will hear us mention here this morning, saturated fats are all quite good for us, with the exception of taking too much of them. Okay, so it's like everything, we do things in moderation. You'll see us using cream, you'll see us using butter, okay? You will never see us using margarine, okay? Because it's tasteless, it's flavourless. And I remember there was one article there going back 3 or 4 months ago that where margarine is short 3 ingredients from being classified as paint. You understand? From being classified as paint. Okay? So all this thing that we've been listening to, and you've heard from Susie in relation, for example, fat this, fat that. There's a massive multi-billion, trillion-dollar industry in relation to fats. And the major corporations that produce all our convenience products in this world, because it's so useless for us, they put sugar into it to make it, give it value. And the problem we have in our lives is the amount of sugar we're taking, not the amount of fats, but obviously the amount of fat to control it. And one typical example, for example, would be where you're talking about, say, like, we all think of, say, olive oil being incredibly good for us. Olive oil is incredibly good for us if we use it correctly. But yet at the same time, we look to, say, the Greek population. They have some of the highest rates of, say, heart problems in the world, and yet all they use is olive oil. So olive oil is good for you, but it doesn't mean you can drink it by the litre. Okay? Fats are good for you, but it doesn't mean, for example, we plaster everything with butter. So it's about using things in moderation more so than being blasé and getting away with, say, using product, for example, just because chef said so. Okay? So cut back on the amount we're using of it. So my pan's nice and hot. Small bit of oil. And again, what's important, to leave the pan come up nice and hot, a small pinch of butter. And the butter is going to help us to caramelize it. Now you see us, for example, getting down close with our fingers. We actually probably don't have any fingerprints. We'd have to explain that at immigration when we're trying to get out of the country because we're kind of handling hot stuff all our lives. So I suppose, you know, you just kind of build up like asbestos fingers from it. So nice and hot. My bacon lardons in. Nice smoky bacon lardons. Just going to give them a couple of seconds, okay, to start to render. What's important is like when you're cooking a steak or you're cooking a rack of lamb, it's very important that you cook it as well as sealing it. But if somebody wants it medium rare, you'd always put your piece of meat, for example, first on the actual, say, fat content. Because if you're going to cook something medium or medium rare, the problem is that your fat is not going to have rendered by the time it comes to actually being finished. So the same thing when you're cooking it with fat, you need to render it down. Okay, so in other words, if you make it quite edible. So quite simply, next year, my few shallots, and mushrooms which we've prepared. Now you see the mushrooms, for example, all we've done with these mushrooms is what we've done is we've just literally dusted them off from the dirt. Okay? Now there's a lot of different methods. Wash your mushrooms and the problem is they're going to go black. If you wash your mushrooms, they go black, but if they're fine, for example, you go from straight there to the pan. The problem with mushrooms really is that they're nearly 99% water as it is. So adding more water is just going to affect your actual finished dish. But also as well, it's very important that you do clean your mushrooms because effectively they're going inside in horse manure, yeah? So it's important we get rid of any trace of E. coli, okay? Especially when you're talking about serving to a customer or serving to a member of the public. So all I'm doing with these is just quick saute. Moving them so they won't stick.
Okay, so steak's almost there, guys. I did just pop it in the oven because it's quite a big steak. So I've got medium rare on that, it's quite pink. Okay? We're going to let that rest. So what we mean by rest is just pop it onto the tray, let it sit there for about 4 minutes while we make the sauce. That's going to let all the juices go through the meat, a nice tender piece of meat. We're going to use the pan for the sauce. Just one little thing, guys, if you're taking pans out of the oven, hot pans, don't leave them on the work surface like that. You'll go and do another job and then you'll turn around and you'll grab the handle. Just put a cloth over the handle or a little sprinkle of salt on the handle when it comes out of the oven, just so you're not, going to turn around. That's a nasty word, okay?
And the other thing as well is, like, if you have something inside the oven, do you know the way where when it's out of sight, it's out of mind? It's out of sight, it's out of mind. It's in the oven, we forget about it, okay? So what I would say to you, for example, would be to get something that's unusual, a tartan, put it up somewhere like that so you can see it. So every time you see that, you know, for example, you've got something inside in the oven, okay? Kind of a gentle, constant reminder. So you don't want to overcook, especially if it's a piece of fish or a piece of meat. Put all your work into your garnish, your sauces, the whole lot, and you've overcooked it, okay? So it's very important to keep an eye on something, especially when it's out of sight or if it's out of mind.
Okay, so now make the sauce, guys. So what we're going to do is take some black pepper. If you want a strong pepper sauce, add the pepper now at the beginning of making the sauce. If you don't want it so strong, you can add the black pepper at the end. So black pepper into the pan. Remember, you can always add more, guys. When you're adding salt and pepper, that's why it's important to taste. You can always add more. The taste is not enough, you can add more. If you add too much salt to something, or too much chilli, or too much pepper, there's not a lot you can do, really, okay? So a little bit of pepper, back on the heat. Now I'm using white wine, but on your recipe I have brandy. What we're going to do is deglaze the pan. What that means is add the alcohol to the pan while it's hot to lift all the sediment off of the pan. All that good sediment and flavour that we have in the pan, we want to get into the sauce. If you're using brandy or whiskey, it will flame. So don't have your head over the pan, because you're going to lose your eyebrows. So, just if you are using brandy, just be careful, it will flame. But we need to burn off the alcohol as well. So a nice hot pan, did flame, and wine doesn't usually flame.
Good wine.
So we're just going to let that deglaze, okay? And let the alcohol reduce. Then we're going to add, I have some demi-glaze here, which is like, I suppose it's a gravy really, it's a brown sauce, okay? You can use beef stock and let it reduce down when you add it to the pan, but this is a brown sauce that I have already made. Going to add some of that to the pan. Now if you're using beef stock, you'd let this boil and reduce by about half, okay? So in with your stock, bring it to the boil, and then we're going to add some cream. Now you can finish it with a little bit of French mustard as well. It's quite nice. And we're just going to simmer that for about a minute. Have a little taste of it. Now if you're making sauces, guys, with your dishes, we've had some amazing sauces. When you're using a stock, if you're going to make the stock, you're not going to have time to make it on the day. So you can make the stock in your home economics room or at home, but send us photographic evidence that you're making it. How do we know you haven't picked it up from a local chef or restaurant, okay? So, it's great to see people making stocks. Try and avoid, you're not going to use a jar of Evan pepper sauce, okay? You're going to, research it. Your mentor chef's going to help you how to come up with the sauce or the dressing that goes with your dish. So, with our sauce there, can finish it with a little bit of mustard. I think it needs a little bit more pepper. A little pinch of salt. chopped herbs if you like. I might say a little bit of mustard's nice in there. I left it back in Fireys this morning. So cream. Now we're going to plate this dish up. Now when you're plating, guys, okay, because we don't go on about the winner of this whole project, but there is a winner, okay? But what we've seen over the last few years, we have very transparent marking, we have really good judges on board, and it's literally been 0.5% between each dish, literally, of the 27 dishes. And Susie's had to come in and look at the nutritional value and stuff like that as well. The one thing that will gain you points, hot plate, clean plate. When you're serving hot food, you need a hot plate, okay? And it should be clean. You ever been to a restaurant and you get a dish and there's a big dirty thumbprint on the side of the plate? It's not very nice. Okay, so hot plate just under the salamander or the grill, which we have in the kitchens. If you're using a glass plate, you can't really heat it up. We understand that if you're using a board, okay? But I personally think white plates or china plates are much nicer to eat off of. Now, remember, you eat with your eyes. So food has to look attractive. We'll help you with that as well. Okay, we'll help you with your presentation. So we'll pop our rosti on the plate. Got a lovely little garnish here. So like I say, if you look at it, it's really just steak, mushrooms and onions. That's all we're doing. Okay. What we're going to do, sometimes it's nice to cut your steak so the customer can see part of the steak and maybe slice some of it, okay?
You know, as you see, what's important, okay, what Chef has done there also is the whole thing of resting. Okay, because we're dealing with protein, okay, which is effectively your meat. For Christmas time coming up, we talk about your turkeys, or pork, or chicken, or fish, or anything. What's important, we allow it to rest. If you don't allow it to rest, that's how you end up with, for example, all the juices and the whole lot pouring around the plate. Okay, so allowing something to rest allows you to keep the juices in from it. Okay, so very, very important part of it. Okay.
So when you're plating, you know, we'll help you with that, but looking cookbooks, cookery programs, we'll always give you ideas. And just remember, the beef is the main star of your dish. The rest is your garnish, okay? Now, you might put some vegetables with this as well. You know, if I was mentioning you, I'd say maybe, you know, some nice green beans and something like that with it, or whatever's in season. Always nice to season the meat that you've cut. You want to be really particular. Now we're going to finish with our sauce. So, you know, it doesn't get much nicer than a bit of soap, guys. Pepper sauce, really. And if you are doing a sauce on your dish, you know, the trend is not too much sauce on the plate. You see that? Cookery programs are restaurants now. So what I'd always suggest is let's have a little bit of sauce on the side as well. So there could be 4 or 5 guys judging your dish. And that's it, guys. That's the first dish. Right? Is that easy enough? See, you know, so really simple, nice pink beef, okay? It's not overcooked, flavours, colours. You know, that's kind of an autumn dish. Think the seasons. Look at the colours in that, that's autumn. You don't want to put, you know, cherry tomatoes from Spain on a dish this time of year, really. So, you know, we've got nice autumn colours and flavours. So that's the first one done, guys. Do you want to get the duck on first, Mark?
Duck first,
yeah. Please, I've got it here. And I'll start the garnish with it.
Now we're starting next with the duck dish, guys. Okay, now, as you can see, for example, you see us here with the dish that's going to be put up in front. Okay, what we will be taking from each and every class that is progressing through is you'll sit down 1 or 2 when we finish and take some photographic evidence of it, and you know, you get an idea of what it is we've been doing. Now, what you see also is that you see us continuously, while Chef is working, I'm continuously cleaning. In kitchens, there's never an idle moment. There's always something to be done. Okay, so I was Chef one time saying to me years ago, if you want to be lazy, at least carry a cloth in your hand. So if you are caught standing around doing nothing, you're seen to be doing something. Understand? But as Chef is doing there from a hygiene perspective, cleaning away the whole time. Using the correct boards, very, very important in relation to, say, red for meats, blue for fish, you know, white for say dairy products, yellow for say for cooked meats, etc., etc. Brown for root vegetables, green for salads. So be very conscious of that element of it, okay? Just again, because hygiene, very important. We don't want to come cross-contaminate, or we don't want to kill anybody. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to prepare the duck. Now we decided to go for duck because everybody does chicken and whatever we sell. We go for poultry element, so it's the duck dish we're doing. Now with the duck dish that you have here is, duck is a nice, it's a fatty bird, okay? Quite fatty, okay? So what we need to do is take a small element of the fat from this, and what we're going to do with it is we're going to rub a small bit of Chinese spice into it, and we're going to just basically seal it off nice and hard, okay? So I'm going to take a small bit of the actual fat from around it here. And my pan behind me is heating up nicely, and it's a very, very quick dish, okay? Now, you'll see these dishes, and we're professionals. We've been at this, what I suppose between the two of us is the best part of 55 years experience. The point being is that, you know, you'll have an hour and a half, okay? And what, it's not about, for example, Christ, I got my up in 20 minutes. What we want to see you using is that hour and a half from the start right through to the finish of plating it. So using all the time that you've been allowed to actually say, to use that to kind of give the best thing that you can possibly put forward to us. So again, it's already been scored for me by chef. And again, the idea of scoring, while it's very important, for example, from a presentation point of view, but it's also, it allows, for example, your fat content to render down quite quickly. It's good for presentation. But it also is very important because we want the actual, say, temperature to get into it more evenly. If, for example, we didn't score this, we'd seal it off, and we'd seal it off the far side. The problem being is that what we'd end up with is that our meat would be overcooked and our fat still wouldn't be rendered, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to season this. Salt in front of me. There's spice, what do we do? Yeah. Small spice. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to seal this off, and I'm going to rub. You could do these in advance and have them, but the longer they're done in advance in relation to rubbing some spices, they're going to take on more flavour. So all I'm going to do with these, I'm going to seal this off with a nice hot pan, not too hot, and simply it's going to go straight in the oven, glazed with a small bit of honey. All right.
So when you look at fatty foods, guys, like duck is often served with something sweet. So we're serving this with a homemade sweet chili sauce, basically a homemade sweet chili dressing. If you look at turkey, it's served with cranberry sauce. Pork is served with apple sauce. Foie gras is served with sauternes, a very sweet wine. And sweetness and fatty foods go well together, okay? Because it helps break down the fat, it makes it more palatable as you're eating it, okay? So, you know, that's why we're doing this. I know it's a little bit Asian, you know, but it is local duck. On your recipe you have pak choy, but I'm using some tender stem broccoli, okay, instead for the stir fry. And all these flavours work together. Chilies, limes, sugar, garlic, all these, you know, they all work. Okay, that's what you have to be thinking, you know, when you're doing
so
dishes.
The other thing as well is when you saw me there, for example, putting it into the pan, it's always important, okay? We never kind of look at the pan and just like throw it like from there, from the side, from any other way, only bring it down to the pan and away from you. So if there is any, say for example, the cooking medium, whether you're using butter or oil, is that if there is going to spit, it's going to spit away from you, not towards you. Okay? So again, small little technique, but at the same time very, very important. Okay? Away from you, not blocked, so the cooking medium is going to go everywhere. So quite simply, nicely glazed, and then a tray.
Yep.
As you can see, nicely glazed, yeah? Okay, that's going to be my finishing presentation. This is going to take approximately maybe about 5-6 minutes in the oven. We're going to bring it to a medium. Okay, the problem is when you're talking about, say, duck breast, obviously, is if you cook well done, it's a tendency to be incredibly tough. So medium is a preferable side to it. You pop this in?
Yep, so in the oven. So I'm going to make the dressing for this, then I might get somebody up. Does anyone want to go at presenting this dish, guys, for the stir fry and presenting it? Do we have any volunteers? No teachers allowed. Come on, lads.
Put your hand up, come on.
Somebody.
Who wants to do it?
What do you think about it?
Chef, up there. Guy up there in the middle there, I'm looking at you. Yeah, you. Yeah,
Right.
come on.
No choice. So,
He was actually the first back, so he's obviously very enthusiastic, yeah?
No pressure. How you doing? Come around that way. Okay, so we're going to make a quick dressing for this, guys. What's your own name? Podrick. And then Podrick's going to basically do the stir fry and present this dish, okay? So, I have a chilli here. Just remember, the smaller the chilli, the hotter the chilli. Red chilies are generally hotter than green chilies, generally, okay? Just with knives, guys, when you're using knives, okay, you need a sharp knife. You're less likely to cut yourself with a sharp knife than with a blunt knife, okay? Because you have to put more pressure on a blunt knife. Also, if you cut yourself with a sharp knife, they can sew it back on quite easily because it's a clean cut. If you cut yourself with a blunt knife, it's a bit tagged and a bit raggedy, and they usually sew it on a bit crooked, okay? So a sharp knife, you need less pressure. Make sure you have a cloth. We have these in the college when you're doing your cook-offs under your board so your chopping board doesn't slip, and then just try and get familiar with the colour-coded chopping boards. Very simple. Brown vegetables, green salads, okay? Yellow cooked meats, red raw meats, blue fish. Okay, so it's quite simple. Now when you're chopping, guys, the only reason people cut themselves when they're chopping is when they're not paying attention, to be honest. Now, you've all seen this, tucking the fingers in, okay? See chefs on the telly, chopping away, looking around, no bother, okay? The reason they can do that is, one, they've done it for years. They've usually been to A&E quite a few times as well, getting fingers sewn back on. But secondly, they're doing this tucking the fingers in. So fingers on the board, tucked in, thumb behind. Not the little pinky. You know what's going to happen. Okay? Not the thumb. Not the fingertips. Okay? It does feel quite uncomfortable to start with, but as you practice it, it becomes second nature. And it's all about taking your time. We can chop fastly, you're not going to do that. Okay? So, and you can use a smaller knife for this. Chilli in half, we won't keep you long, Podrick, so I'm going to get you working now. Okay, and we're just going to take out the seeds. That's the very hot part of the chilli. That finger and the chilli. So if you don't want hot chilli, take that out, okay? Now we're going to chop it nice and fine. And you see the knife isn't leaving the board. We're not doing that. Okay, the knife isn't leaving the board. It's a rocking motion. When you speak to a chef there about how many students he has to take up to A&E, in Tralee in the first couple of weeks when they start college, I say you're up there hours or
I suppose the big thing when it comes to say knives, okay, is that it's a very simple thing when you look at knives. Knives for a chef, or say somebody involved in food preparation, they're an integral part of you as a person. So therefore, it's like, I suppose, to use the analogy, we all have friends. Sometimes we fall out with our friends, but you know, we make back up again. The point is, with your knife, if you don't respect it, it's going to bite you. You understand? It's going to bite you, it's going to give you a little nick. But the vast majority of the times where your knives are going to cut yourselves, it's all got to do with the fact that you're not focused on what you're doing. So for example, I would say it's nearly 90% of the times that we cut our fingers, our students cut our fingers in class here, it's always when they're talking about the night before, where they're not actually focused, or they're actually putting their knives away into their packs after class. It's never actually when they're focused on what they're actually doing. So knives, very important. I suppose the positive thing is once they're sharp, they give it a neater cut. So use a sharp knife rather than a blunt knife, okay? But again, just be very careful, conscious of your knives, okay? The safety concerns to have with them, okay?
Right, so what we're going to do, guys, what I have here, to make our little sweet chilli dressing, you can see more sweet chilli sauce in Ireland than any other country in Europe per population. You're mad for sweet chilli sauce over here, guys. It's on everything, okay? So we're making a little sweet chilli dressing. What I have in there is equal amounts of brown sugar, caster sugar and water, as per your recipe. Bring it to the boil, take it off the heat and just let it cool. As that goes cold, it does become syrupy, okay? So that's the sweet part of the sauce. We're going to add some chopped chilli, and then we're going to get Podrick to chop some coriander here. Now, when you're chopping herbs, easiest thing you can chop in the world, okay? So you can pinch the tip of the knife, or you can use the palm of your hand. So you're not doing that, okay? And all you're doing is leaving the tip of the knife on the board, and you're going nice and fast. But if you honestly, keep your fingers aside. You don't want to do that, okay? So just you point your fingers up, chop away nice and fast, okay? So Podrick's going to chop them, and then we're going to do some scallions. You've got better to do. Keep the thing without pushed out. So you're not doing that. Okay, good. Don't worry about that. No. So I'm going to try. That's it. So keep that. Okay? Yeah. Well done. Okay, right guys, we'll keep focus now. So we're going to add the coriander, Podrick, to the... you're going to add the coriander to the dressing, okay? Now on your recipe I have pak choy, which is like a Chinese lettuce, but it does grow in Ireland, okay? We're using tender stem broccoli. So if you were to add carbohydrate to this dish, what do you think you'd add to it? What do you think you'd add to it as a carbohydrate? Would you do spuds on the side? No, you'd use noodles or brown rice. It's an Asian dish. Soba noodles, egg noodles, stuff like that. Okay, Project. Now, so that's our dressing. We're going to add a little squeeze of lime juice. And we're going to add a little bit of Thai fish sauce, which is made with fermenting fish, used in Thai cookery instead of salt. Okay? Then we're going to taste it, see if it needs more lime juice, coriander, etc. So it's all about tasting, guys. Lovely light dressing. Okay, that's our homemade sweet chilli. Pop that aside. Now what we're going to do is get Podrick to do the stir fry. Okay, so when you're stir frying, guys, the most important thing is your wok or your frying pan, whatever you're using, should be red hot. Okay, if it isn't red hot, you're not going to stir fry, you're going to stew. Excellent. So we're going to get that roasting hot. We're going to add a little bit of oil. We're going to stir fry a little bits of tender stem broccoli for about 2 minutes. We're going to take it off the heat, add our scallions, a little bit of the dressing, and then we're going to, or Podrick's going to plate this dish up, okay? So green vegetables, any vegetables, you don't want to overcook them. You've all heard the term al dente or al dente, you heard that term? Yeah, know what it means? To cook, to not overcook, basically. So it should have a bite, it should be crisp. If you overcook green vegetables, they go brown, they go tasteless. If you overcook anything, it goes tasteless, okay? So al dente, so this really is lovely for stir frying these green vegetables. So really, really, really hot wok. We're going to add a little bit of oil. Come over to me here, Podrick. Then we're going to let the duck rest when it comes out the oven, okay? The stir fries are lovely. You know, a little stir fry, chicken or beef, and you know, think of a stir fry, it's good mood food. It's healthy, it's quick. It doesn't get quicker than a stir fry, really. So, right, so really hot pan. Now, I'm going to put some in first, Podrick, just to show you now. When you're placing stuff into a pan, guys, away from you, don't drop it from a height, because you're going to splatter yourself with hot oil, okay? So, good bit of oil, smoking hot wok. It needs to be hot, because when you're stir frying, the food's hitting the side of the wok and it's still cooking when it hits the side of the wok. If your wok isn't hot, and the food hits the side of the wok, as you stir it, it ends up stewing. Now, Podrick, what you got to do for me, okay, is just nice and carefully in the wok, okay? So away from you. So you could add garlic or ginger, you know, chilli, stuff like that. And then all we're going to do every once in a while is give this wok a little stir. Okay? Now in there. Okay? And then every kind of 20 seconds or so, now I'm going to toss it, but you're not. I'm going to give it a little stir. Okay? So that's our stir fry, guys. We're going to take the wok off the heat. And then we're going to serve this dish up, really. So very simple. You would add more to this dish if you were doing it. You know, like I say, you might add some noodles or do something a little bit different with it. And we'll help you with that. Okay, let me do it. And just want it literally 1.5 to 2 minutes is all you're cooking that dish for that for, okay? So duck's in the oven. And we're going to get the plate hot ready to serve. Dressing, so everything's there ready to go. Okay, so you know, just have a small bite on it still. Well, there you go, over here to me. Right, go let the wok cook a second. I have some soda. I have some sesame seeds here. Put them in. See how fresh it looks, guys, okay? This is what we're talking about, fresh, healthy food. Bit of garlic if you like. And we have our plate under the grill. A few scallions. And now we're going to get Podrick to present this dish, okay? Have a go with it. So you can put carrots, peppers, etc. in there, okay? So that's your stir fry. A little bit of the dressing. Now, you got a lovely thing. Right, now we're going to present this project, okay? So we're going to come here. Now when you're presenting food, guys, like I say, clean plates, hot plates, what you're going to do, project, whatever you think is going to be nice, is just present your broccoli on the plate, okay? So have a go. That's it now. Straight away, right, what I do is I take it away from the edge of the plate. Yeah, no, that's all right, it's okay, that's all, you know, clean your plate. Okay, so nice and tidy. Just a pile of it. That's it. That's all right. No, that's good. Everyone presents differently, guys. Okay. Now we're going to carve the duck. So, no, we're going to put the duck in, okay? So just carve your duck. I'll do it for you, it's quite hot project, okay?
There's 3 more of me coming down in a second, guys, so...
We're finished. Now, so we see we've got a lovely pink duck there. Okay guys, just 1 second now. And again we might put a piece of the whole duck on there. What are we going to do, Podrick? Is maybe just arrange the duck nicely like that on the plate, okay? Just nice and simple. So again, it's fresh looking, guys. That's it, yeah, something like that. Good there, yeah? That's good. Perfect. Okay. Give him a round of applause, guys. Okay, guys, so that's our duck dish. We're just going to do the paste dish now, which is a very quick dish, or the fish dish, and then we're going to finish with a winter salad, okay? Right, so do you want to start with the julienne, Mark?
Okay, so what I'm doing next, okay, is the vegetable part of the dish is garnished as well, okay, which we're going to be serving this, and what we term is something like it's going to be is a julienne. A julienne, not julienne's, julienne. Okay, and when you're talking about, say, for example, with all those dishes, okay, the most important thing from anyone say involved, say when you're talking about say food preparation, is uniformity. Okay, so uniformity, say for example you're doing a dish and it's going to be served again at say 7:15 tonight service, and there's going to be another 2 portions served at 8 o'clock, and there's another portion that happens tonight, that they're all uniform, okay? Now uniformity can only happen, for example, where you have the correct size portion, the correct size garnish, and trying to make everything as even and as well cut as possible. So what I'm going to use here is I'm using, what's this, guys? A slicer, mandolin, yeah? Mandolin. Now you have, say, you have slicers in some of your home economics rooms. Your slicers, okay, this would be more professional yoke, okay, but basically what it allows you is to slice your ingredient nice and thin. So what we're going to do with these is we're going to create ourselves some julienne. And what we're going to do then is we're going to blanch these guys off, and we're just going to toss them in a small bit of butter and some seasoning, and they're going to be served on the base of my plate then with my fish around it and my sauce. Okay, so there's 3 elements to this dish, and you'll see, for example, it all happens incredibly fast, okay, so we'll slow it down a wee bit. So with my mandolin, I've measured it, just run 1 piece through it, so that you're actually happy with the depth of thickness. Now, you will see, for example, with mandolins, they come with guards and protection and all these kind of thing, okay, but if you feel that you need to move fast with it, so cover your hands. I'd always get the students here to cover your hands with it, okay, because you will nick yourself if you move quite fast, okay? So, run it through both your courgette and your carrot, and all you're going to do then with it is just going to line them up so they're nicely, neatly stacked, so when I go at them with my knife, for example, then I'm going to have them all evenly cut pretty much in around at the same time. So we should have enough in that there. Gonna get my wee bit of carrot. Same process. Run it through. Run it slow or run it fast. Now, park that aside. No different to say that with my courgettes. What I've done to do is again stack them all so they're sitting neatly on top of each other. So when I go back with my knife again, which we'll do in a second, you'll see what I mean, yeah? So stack them all nice and neatly. And what we're going to do then is we're going to blanch these. And again, as you hear chefs saying, the thermal dent. We here in Ireland have a tendency to cook everything to within an inch of its life. Christmas Day, for example, those green things that you call sprouts, okay, they'll be boiled to within an inch of its life. Think of the thermal dent. Say it at home to see what reaction you'll get. But what it is you will learn from, say, the thermal dent, as chef was saying, is something that's brought to the point of just being cooked. Cooking something on the point, but bringing something from beyond that. It's like going to an Irish wedding, for example, and there's batten carrots at an Irish wedding. You're probably better off nutritionally to go into the kitchen and drink the water it was cooked in rather than eating the carrot, because it's been boiled to within an inch of its life, okay? So it's nutritionally of no value to you in relation to fibre, it's just a filler. So again, al dente where you possibly can. So again, with these guys, square them up, and again, as chef was saying, keep your fingers tucked in, nice and even, run your blade, the knife never leaves the board, okay? And as you can see, I don't even have to be looking down at it, do you understand? Because we've been doing it for so long, because autopilot, do you understand? So again, but for you, if anything can be learned, and I even see here with the students, the first couple of weeks that we're here, I would always say to them, you're going home this evening, I say whatever, I guarantee you, each and every one of you, if you go home this evening, there's probably some poor carrot at the bottom of your fridge. There's probably some pepper, maybe tomorrow it's going to get bin. There's probably some onion, for example, that's kind of on its last legs inside in the cabinet. Take it out, top and tail it, get a knife that's relatively sharp, and practice. Okay, practice it. Because at the end of the day, we eat this morning, we're going to eat this afternoon, and we're going to eat tonight. And yet at the same time, our skills in relation to our, say, cooking techniques is something we should be working on from a healthy point of view in relation to our lifestyles and how well we're going to live our lives. So again, I'd be suggesting, for example, those who would go forward the program, very important, look up that dynamic learning account. There's a fantastic part there in relation to, say, for example, your knives and how it is you can work with them. And it's no problem getting a sharp knife. Sharp knives are good, but it's how you actually work with them. Okay, so develop that technique. And we've seen students, for example, that come through this program, for example, that their skills and their techniques would be on par with some of our secular professional full-time students. And it's not because they were born with that technique, it's because they practiced it. Okay? And it makes life so incredibly easy for you. Okay, Chef?
Yep, so that's the first one element of the dish, guys, is the vegetables, okay? We're going to do a little, on your recipe it's brill, which is a flat fish. I have plaice. Plaice is in season at the moment. It's a lovely fish actually. White fish and a flat fish. Okay, so once it's off the bone and filleted, there's no little bones in the fillet. Oily fish is better for you, generally speaking. So when I say oily fish, what do I mean by oily fish? Give me an example. Yeah, excellent. Salmon, mackerel, yeah. Sardines, tuna. That has the meat oils in it. It's been proven over the last couple of years that if you eat mackerel, fresh mackerel once a week, you can reduce your chances of Alzheimer's by up to 70%. And that goes back to what Susie was saying about your brain being 60% fat, good fats. So when you're studying, guys, it's really important that you get those good fats into you. And one way you can do that, for instance, is if you're making a smoothie for the morning, put some flax seeds in the smoothie when you make it, they blend up, okay? Tuna, tin tuna's good, you know, but it's really important, it's been proven that you will study better if you have, you know, forget the processed chicken rolls, 4 sausage rolls for €2 in Centra, okay, or Londis, the 4-in-1s in Milltown in the Chinese, forget all that. When you're studying, you need to be eating properly, okay? And it's vitally important. So whitefish, I have plaice. I've taken one of the fillets of plaice and put it in my food processor here with a few fresh prawns. And what we're making is a basic fish mousse. Now you can make this with chicken, stuff chicken with it, put black pudding in it, okay? You can put pesto in here, roast red peppers, loads of herbs. So a little bit of lemon, my prawns, my fish, and I put in a good pinch of salt, okay? We're going to just mince that up in the food processor. You don't want to puree it, just kind of mince it. And then we're going to add some cream. And that's going to be the filling for our fish. Now this is a baked fish dish. How long do you think it's going to take to cook? That piece of place there, we'll stuff it. 20 minutes? Half an hour? Going to make about 12 to 15 minutes, okay? And it all goes back to that not overcooking. Think of sushi. Anyone had sushi before? Japanese? Raw fish? The majority of fish you can eat raw, okay? Once it's fresh. So it's all about not overcooking. So what you end up with is this little mousse. You can put in some herbs if you like. Now if you're making a chicken mousse, you'd often put egg white into it, okay? But I don't for a white fish mousse. So a little bit of herbs. And all we're going to do is just take this mousse. Now obviously I could taste that, but I'm not going to. But if you want to taste that to make sure you got the seasoning correct, you just pop a little teaspoon of it into boiling water and just cook it for a couple of minutes, and then you can taste it. And if it's not got enough salt and pepper, you can add more. Okay, so roll that onto your fish. A little bit of salt maybe on the fish as well. And fish does take quite a lot of seasoning, guys, you know, especially white fish. It's quite bland. What we're going to serve this dish with is the vegetables. We're going to saute a few little prawns as well as we serve it, just fry some prawns. And something called a beurre blanc, which is a herb butter sauce, which chef's going to make there now. So, roll it up onto your tray. A little bit of oil, a little bit of salt and pepper, and that's going to go in the oven. So you can stuff them. You know, you can really play around with something like that as a little stuffed fish. So a little bit of oil. And in the oven, 12 to 15 minutes. I'll show you how to test it when it comes out, okay? Nice and simple. If you want to be extravagant, you can find someone that's got lobsters, you can do lobster in the mousse. We haven't had anybody bring a live lobster in yet, but it'd be nice to see it actually, if you get over the kid in it. So, you know, you can use lobster, you can just put mussels in there. You really play around with that, okay?
Right guys, so what I'm doing next, okay, is we're just kind of working ahead of ourselves. This fish is on. The julienne is all ready. As you can see, for example, it's all nice and even, and they're all from the same family, okay? Nice and even. So what we've done in the meantime, because we're making ourselves a nice light, say, beurre blanc. Now beurre blanc, basically, beurre blanc, butter. So white sauce, but with use of butter. So we're going to just, what we've got here is just a small bit of white wine. Now you can, for example, if you want to add a slight little kick to it, would be a slight pinch of maybe say a good white wine vinegar, maybe a teaspoon of it, okay? Gives it that extra slight bit of tartness that you need with it. Squeeze of lemon juice, just some white wine, and again, what you see here is down by nearly 60-70%, okay? So reduce it down just to concentrate the flavour. So on back to the temperature, small bit of cream into this, and again what we're going to do is we're going to bring the temperature up. And once we have the temperature up on this, once we have the sauce made, the last thing we're going to add to it is going to be some of our fresh herb. But just prior to, for example, before we add our fresh herb to it, we're going to mount it with some butter. So a small bit of a few knobs of butter, and what that's going to do is going to give you kind of a nice velvety texture, and it's going to give it a better coating consistency.
So you could add again, you could add other stuff to that sauce. Nice diced tomato, basil, grapes. You have to see the sole running.
Yes,
the classic dish with grapes, okay, sole dish with grapes. So you could play around with that as much as you like. And you can serve a beurre blanc with chicken. Okay, maybe put tarragon into it, some wild mushrooms underneath the chicken, that kind of stuff. Okay?
But I suppose the one thing that's important, guys, if you know, it's fine to be looking at these cooking programs and thinking like, it's doing the simple things. A simple sauce, nice and light. The most important thing in any of the dishes that you see here, for example, you see there is the duck, the main ingredient there is the actual, say, beef. All the rest of the ingredients are secondary, so you should never have a sauce that's going to overpower your main ingredient in relation to flavour. It should be just there to complement, if that makes sense. Okay, so this is reducing nicely now. Fish is on.
Yep, be about 6-7 minutes.
6-7 minutes,
Yeah.
okay. Right, so some butter. So all I'm going to do with the butter here is again some knobs of butter here to dip. Quite simply add it to it and keep swilling the butter around. And what's actually happening is the actual butter is thickening it. Now the only problem is if you're going to make, say, a simple sauce like this, is that it's very you will not be bringing it back to the heat or temperature, because the problem is then is that the butter will split from the cream, so you'll end up with a kind of a split sauce. So what we have here is you've actually seen me some butter into it. What we call that in industry is we call that to monter au beurre, or to be mounted with butter. Okay, to be mounted with butter. Now we'll add the garnish to this, for example, some nice fresh herb to this at the really kind of like at the last moment, because if you add herb too far in advance, you look at like say soft herb like this, okay, by comparison say like a woody herb. You see a woody herb also we like rosemary. This is obviously thyme. It's a bit more, you'd use these a lot for say stocks because they're very firm. But you wouldn't use the likes of say like a soft herb too far in advance, because the problem is it starts to break down, it goes black and discolors. So again, we've just mounted our sauce. The butter has completely melted into it. We'll check it for some, does it require seasoning, because if you don't, you might not necessarily need seasoning if you've used salted butter. Okay, so just be conscious that if you use unsalted butter, therefore you're going to require some seasoning. So I got a small bit of, again, some salt in this, small bit of pepper, and our sauce is good to go, chef.
Okay. Well, I did the salad first, Mark.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. So got my timing slightly on there. So what I'm going to do, we're going to present that dish in a while when the fish is cooked, okay? What we're going to do is do a nice little winter salad for you now. People often associate salads as summer, and they associate salads as cherry tomatoes, cucumber, lettuce, limp lettuce leaves, etc. You can do beautiful autumn and winter salads. Now this dish that I'm doing here you mostly wouldn't serve it as the main dish, but it could complement the dish. So this can complement something like a nice vegetarian dish. One year, one of the girls I was mentoring, we did a sweet potato and feta cheese strudel, and we presented it with a salad similar to this. This would go lovely with pan-fried scallops, okay? But bear in mind, when you're going through to put your projects in, a lot of these produce might not be in season that I'm using, okay? So, very simple salad. And what I've done is, here I have some butternut squash. You know butternut squash? Okay. And I just chopped it up, a little bit of olive oil, roasted it in the oven just to caramelise the natural sugars, okay? So if you think of parsnips, carrots, they're lovely roasted, aren't they, on Christmas Day, you know? Because you can caramelise those natural sugars. Also looks colourful, looks autumn. You know, it's an autumn vegetable, so let's use it. Okay, so I had some butternut squash there. I had some red onions that I just caramelised in a pan, nice and slowly. And I had some beetroot. So beetroot, again, it's one of my favourite vegetables. We've had a lot of it used over the years in the Apprentice chef. That was it, Aoife? Beetroot with her dish. Well, there's been a good bit of beetroot used anyway. So I'm going to cut that into chunks.
We had even, for example, you're talking about beetroot, there's a publication that came out in Kerry here last week, was it called Recovery Haven. It's for cancer people, survivors, and there was 10,000 copies of this produced. And Corey Grandles, a student from Scoil Inverskin, who was part of the project last year, he came up with a dish of a beetroot burger with what else? There was
amazing sweet potato chips.
Sweet potato chips and whatever, and it was a dish that automatically saw from its nutrition point of view. So there's 10,000 copies of Corey Grandles around the place at the moment. So beetroot, yeah, it's important.
So when you're doing a salad, guys, you don't just have to throw it all in the bowl. You know, present it nicely. So, you know, let the customer or the judges or let them see the ingredients. So we've got our roast butternut squash, you can put sweet potato, etc. in it. Okay, we've got our beetroot. So straight away you're thinking autumn with those colours. I've got some hazelnuts. And I'm going to, on your recipe it's pine nuts, but I'm using hazelnuts. And that just gives the texture. When you're serving a salad, try and give it a bit of texture, whether croutons or seeds or nuts, and then you've got nutritional value as well. So I have my red onions here. Just been caramelised. I put a little bit of thyme in them when I did it as well. Straight away you're looking at that dish. It looks healthy. It's good mood food. You've got all your good nutrients in there. And I do a dish very similar to this myself with, like I say, pan-fried scallops. It's really, really good. Okay, and then I do have some salad leaves. Again, you don't have to put salad leaves on your salads, but I just have some watercress there. Some rocket. I'll just pop a little bit of that in the centre. Some nice colours, guys, again. Goat cheese I have on your recipe, it is blue cheese, which works really well with cheese works well with sweetness, okay? So I'm just going to crumb some goat cheese. You're blessed with cheeses in Cork, guys. We're not doing bad, Kerry. In Cork, you're blessed, you know. So try and go local cheese, if you can. We have a few hazelnuts. You can toast them. Using walnuts, you can sprinkle a little bit of sugar on them and just put them under the grill to candy them slightly. Okay, which is nice. And then I have some chops or some picked meat, just to finish it. So think of those flavours, guys. They all work together. You know, the saltiness of the cheese with the sweetness of the vegetables. It looks pretty good for a salad, you know, one of those little linked salads that you may be used to. And all we're going to do to finish it is a little bit of balsamic vinegar. A little bit of extra virgin olive oil. And what I always do with salads as well is just take a few of the little sea salt flakes just to give it a crunch, okay? So now that's a very simple little salad there. You could serve with something or elaborate on it for a vegetarian dish. It's things like chickpeas, lentils, stuff like that, okay? So that gives you an idea of water salad, guys. Yeah.
Okay guys, so what we have now to finish off the last dish is we're going to blanch off the julienne of say courgettes and some carrot. Okay, so while the chef was finishing that up, because the carrot's a bit more firmer than the courgettes, I put them on maybe an extra say minute and a half earlier, okay? They're only going to take approximately about 2-3 minutes in total, but if you look at say like courgettes, okay, courgette's much softer, therefore it's much more subtle, so it doesn't require. So it's only going to go in literally with the carrots about say 15-20 seconds. We're going to take them out from that, we're going to toss them and season them, and that's going to be the central point in of our plate. Now, so now, what we use here, we say for example, it's like to rechauffer or to reheat is also what we'd use this for, okay? So we have a little basket here, so that's literally ready to come out now. The chef's going to talk you through this, the fish. I have myself my little pan on. You see what we're doing, there's a method in what we're doing. I've got a job to do, it's leading into where chef is going to deal with the fish, the sauce is ready, so the whole lot's going to come together in the next 2 or 3 minutes. So a small pinch of butter again. Rid of the excess water, because the last thing you want in your plate is water. Okay? Hear that sound? Nice little sound, so that we're glazing it, getting as much flavor to it as possible. Small pinch of salt. A wee bit of black pepper.
So I'm just going to fry up a few prawns here, guys, or saute a few prawns. It's not on the recipe, but I have prawns left, okay? 3 to 4 minutes you're going to cook your prawn. Okay, you don't need to leave it much longer. So a really hot pan again, you want it to sizzle. We're going to put the prawns in. And just cook them 3 minutes, 4 at the very most. This will be your last job. This is where your time plan comes in place, okay? A little bit of salt, and again, prawns go pink as you cook them. They're not pink, it's like lobster, you know? They're kind of grey or black, and they go pink as you cook them. Now, to test your fish, guys, the way I was taught to test fish when I learned to cook, my very first head chef, was with a small knife. Okay, you do eventually get used to peeling the fish, okay? if it flakes slightly, but often your fish breaks up then. So if you have skin on the fish, you might not be able to do that. So if you take a small knife and put it into the centre of your fish for 6 seconds, or a metal skewer, okay? Take it out and just tap it on the back of your hand. And what you should have is that reaction, okay? Like a hot cup of tea. If you like that, nothing's happening, it's not cooked. If you get a big blister and the knife sticks to your hand, you know you've overcooked it. So just that kind of hot cup of tea, okay, is what we're looking for. So we're going to plate this up. We have our sauce there. Do you want to plate your chef? Right? We have our sauce there. We're going to add some herbs to the sauce. So like Chef was saying there at the end, we have our prawns there. And when you're plating, again, you know, this has no potato with it. What do you think you can serve with this, guys? Potato rice. Any ideas? Oh, nice mashed potatoes, sauté potatoes. Go onto the dynamic learning account with your teachers, and there was hundreds of potato dishes in there. Totally potato dishes that you mostly never heard of. Classic French potato dishes, you know. And that's what that's why you need to be using that dynamic learning. Okay. So I pop that there. Now chefs are quite funny when they present food. They tend to work in odd numbers. So what I mean by that is you wouldn't put 4 corns on the plate because it looks a bit stupid. That's what it does though. You know, artists are the same. When florists, you know, if you have 4 on a plate, well no, maybe chefs are just a bit odd like that. But it does actually look better, okay? So I'm going to take my sole, or my place in this case. Just trim off the end. We've got our mousseline inside. We're going to pop one on the plate like so. Same with this one then. The place is a lovely fish, you know. It's a fish that actually tastes totally different to any other fish. Okay, one there, and then we're just going to finish it with a little Napoleon sauce. Right, so that would need something else, and as a mentor, I'd be saying, right, let's do something with that. Maybe some little potato croquettes or bonbons to give it this texture, something like that. Okay, a few herbs. Nice sauce, right? Isn't it? He's alright though, you know. So that's it, guys. That's our dish there. Final one. Maybe a few little slip chives to finish it. Not dissimilar to the Julie's dish, who won the Apprentice Chef the first year actually. She did a dish very similar to that. Okay, so that's it guys, easy enough? Yeah? So if you take a look at the 4 dishes, I suppose the most important thing is how simple they are. The fact that we did them in an hour and 15 minutes or so, okay? And everything works, all the flavours work, seasonal, nice colours, and that's what we're looking for guys. Especially with your initial projects. Then we can help you develop your dish to the level that you saw in the videos, okay? And that's pretty much it.
But I suppose you see, if we did dishes, for example, which we could do no bother, for example, see what you see in the finished dishes with some of the students, it'd be just information overload, okay? So I suppose the idea of the dishes that we've shown you here today is that they're so simple in their approach. I want you to kind of go back to your kitchens and look at how simple your dish can be. Our job then is to bring it to the next stage. Have we any questions, guys? None whatsoever. What we'll do so is if we get maybe 2, 3 people from say each class, maybe to come from each school, just take some photographic evidence of these. There'll be a video, a video of say what was done today. For example, you send out your school skin if you want to rehash and go back over it. And while you're down here, as you're passing out later on today, next whatever, ask us any questions we don't feel like asking. Why do we wear a chef's hat? Okay, why we wear a chef's hat is very, very simple. It goes back to a whole thing called gastronomy. It's called a history of, say, gastronomy. And if you go to mainland Europe, you've got a thing called guilds. And for example, you can't just say waltz around Paris or anywhere in Europe, for example, without being in a guild. Being in a guild, being a carpenter, plumber, electrician, or any of these different things. So to be a chef, going back 150, 200 years ago, you actually had to be part of a guild. So how were we distinguished? So our profession was distinguished because it was seen as the king of all crafts. So therefore the hat was given like a crown to make us a bit more important.
It still rubs off on us. And just as Chef was saying there about this being a profession, like it was often seen as a trade, and I know I said it to the group that I took around today, you know. Years ago, if you wasn't academic, you were pushed towards the trade, okay? Mechanic, carpenter, chef. But what being a chef has become now, it's much more a profession and a craft, you know, which is great to see. And I think, you know, I was saying to the group earlier, the world's your oyster in anything you do in life anyway, but as a chef, like, it's such, all in food, it's such a dynamic industry, guys. It gets a lot of bad press, you know. But I'm sure Chef would say the same as me. In the 24 years I was cooking in kitchens, there wasn't a day I didn't get up and not want to go to work, unless I forced it upon myself socially from too many drinks the night before. But like, you know, you would actually want to go and work in the best places you could and learn from the best, and that's what it's all about. You know, that's what it's all about, whatever you do. But it's an amazing industry. Myself and Chef have worked all over the world with it, travelled the world with it, never not found a job, flown into countries, off the plane, a job within 2 hours. And it's not just about working in the kitchen. You know, that's what we're trying to get across. It's about possibly doing a course in IT Tralee, best IT in the country, and do a course in IT Tralee, okay, and then you use that as a backdoor to go on something else, such as environmental health, food blogging, food tourism, food writing, hotel inspectors, food stylists. You know, it's endless. It's endless. You don't have to spend the rest of your career in a kitchen. Cookery schools, that kind of stuff. You know. So.
We see, for example, say there's one region down in South Kerry where I'd be originally from, say for example, and we for that part of the county, we've probably the least uptake in relation to students that would have an interest, say, in the service industry in relation to, say, food tourism or anything to do with that. And a lot of the reason for that is because of their negative experiences going into working places back around there. Okay? And the problem is with young kids, for example, that would see it as a future, as a possibility, they'd automatically associate that negative experience with what the actual industry is about. And that negativity, unfortunately, is what people believe in. But yet at the same time, I mean, as I said earlier to some of you, I was chatting outside, there's a lot of, say, the guys I went here, girls and boys that I went to college with, for example, they're lecturing, they're gone into environmental health, they're teachers, some of them have diversified, become home economics teachers. What I'm saying is that it's an amazing platform for you to find your own tributary, to find an area. It's not just one single thing, it opens up so many different avenues for you. Any more questions? Okay, so as we're coming down and you're leaving, okay, unfortunately we won't have enough for everybody to get a taste, so we'll take some photographic evidence. On behalf of myself, Susie and Mark, thanks very much for coming to college. It's been fantastic having you, and we've had no messers today, which is absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks.